Hello, my name is Peggy McGill, and I would like to talk to you about my book review of Blur: How to Know What is True in the Age of Information Overload. First of all, I would like to say that I highly recommend this book. I thought it was an excellent book and I thoroughly enjoyed reading about it. And I feel like it would be an excellent book for all communication students to read. It does have more of a journalism slant talking about news and things like that, but I think for anyone talking about putting out messages as far as public relations, strategic communication, I think it's just an excellent book to give you more information on the types of messages we will be outputting and also receiving. I would say that one of the best things about this book that the main concept and the framework that they lay out is that we as consumers must become our own editors in a sense. Previously, before we came into the 24/7 age and we came into the internet age, it's very interesting to realize that a small group of people actually made decisions of what the stories that we would see that night on the news that millions of people would see, and certain people had control of that. I find that very fascinating. Whereas now we're at an age where there's just information everywhere, and I can go find all kinds of information. But is it real information? Is it valuable information? And that's what this book talks about. And its main concept is that we must become these gatekeepers. The old gatekeepers are not there anymore. The 10, 15 men in a room deciding what to hear, they're not there. We must become these gatekeepers. We must be skeptical and we must question everything. And the book gives a very, very good guide on how to do that and how to find practical and credible information. And it talks about different types of journalism, which I'd like to talk about in just a moment, that I find fascinating. But the central idea here, again, I'd really go back to say is that you don't want to take things at face value. You want to investigate, be your own investigator, be your own editor, and be your own gatekeeper. And particularly if you're in charge of putting out a message, I would highly recommend doing that. One of the first things that they talked about that I did not know, which I found very, very interesting, was they gave more history of how information output has changed tremendously. We think we are in this age where we are on information overload, where we can get anything at this point right now. However, the information output has changed over time tremendously. Going back to the cave drawings, that was the first part of where someone was trying to communicate and give a message. And it changed from cave drawings to the printing press, to the telegraph, to radio, to television, to cable television, and to digital technology now. And man has always had to keep up with these changes in technology, whatever they were. And I found that also very, very interesting. So we saw the history of how we sort of got to this particular area. One of the things they recommend is that you use basic journalism skills. You ask the questions: who, what, when, where, how, and why of the story. Ask these questions again. Be skeptical. They also go back and they talk about the types of journalism that are out there that I felt this was very important because it's been something that's made me uncomfortable. One of the things that I do not like and that we see tremendously is the journalism of affirmation. And that is where you can go to any particular channel and find the viewpoint that you have, where it affirms what you think. Whatever the facts are, they're going to affirm what you think. And I think we're in a slightly almost dangerous part of society where people are not believing true facts because it doesn't fit with what they believe. And I've seen many actual outright incorrect pieces of information on television news because it was trying to fit it to a story. They were trying to fit the facts to the story and not tell the story around the facts. And I think that's frightening. And that's the journalism of affirmation. And that's something we have to be very, very careful of. Probably the purest form is the journalism of verification, where you have that's the traditional, where they place the highest value on the facts. It makes me think of the story of Watergate, where Woodward and Bernstein broke that story, and I believe it took them several years, and they were so concentrated on getting the facts correct. They were not in a rush to get out the story. So they were really the journalism of verification. And we also then moved into sort of some overlap, the journalism of assertion, where in the journalism of assertion, we were rushing to get out the message. So were the facts correct? Perhaps not. But they wanted to be the first person to get out the message. An example of that, I believe, would be a story of Columbine, where if you go back and read a book written 10 years after Columbine, what it basically does, this book debunks all of the myths that came out in the first week, and all of the stories that we heard of different pieces of information regarding this massacre. And it turned out none of them were true. And I think that was very sad and also frightening that 10 years later, when a book was written, how many people still believe this original story? So again, it goes back to the central premise of this book of being skeptical and getting the facts correct and not always necessarily having to be first. With the journalism of verification, the journalism of assertion, we've talked about the journalism of affirmation, and there's also interest group journalism, which I think all of us have seen. For an example, I'm a Humane Society supporter, so if I want to go there and read their stories, I have to know that they have an interest in the stories they're putting out there. So as a true gatekeeper, I would need to go to other sources and verify those facts and the information that they give. So these are the types of information, and what they also do as far as after they give us these types of journalism that we need to look at, what they do is they give us sort of some steps to ask, things to know, things to look at, where first you want to identify the kind of content you're encountering. And second, you want to identify whether a news story is complete. Third, you want to question and assess the source. Does the source have an agenda? Fourth, involves assessing the evidence. Nowadays, we have so much more in the form of evidence as far as video, as far as pictures, but you have to assess the integrity of that evidence. The fifth is talking about what kind of journalism you're encountering, and this goes back to what we were just discussing. Is it the affirmation? Is it the particular type of journalism? That what type are we seeing? Look at it to verify that. And the last one is evaluating. What are we getting? Are we getting what we need from this story? Is the information, are your questions being answered? I know a lot of political shows that I see, my questions are not answered. So what I have to do is become that gatekeeper and go find other sources of information to get those questions answered. So I, again, recommend this book. I think it is wonderful. I'm going to leave you with something that I found absolutely fascinating, just a very small tip, that the classical definition of news is whatever is happening that you didn't know. The word news implies things that are new and from all around. North, east, west, and south. The points on a compass spell out the words news. And with that, I will end my book review, and I thank you for your time.